The storm started the same night the power company cut service to the old Lockridge property. Everyone in town knew that house. 3 stories tall, rotting gray wood, leaning just slightly toward the road as if it were trying to listen. It had been abandoned for decades, ever since the woman who lived there vanished one summer night during a thunderstorm that took out half the county's power grid. For years, nobody touched the place. But when a man named Carter bought it at auction last spring, people joked that he'd last a month before moving out. He lasted 12 days. Carter was a construction foreman, the kind of guy who didn't believe in ghosts or superstitions, only bad wiring and worse foundations. He'd moved in alone, planning to fix the place up and flip it. The first week was fine, just the usual creaks and drafts you'd expect from a 100-year-old house. But then the storms rolled in. He told me later that it started small, faint tapping on the windows at night, even when there was no wind. Then after the first thunderstorm, he began finding puddles in the upstairs hallway. The ceiling wasn't leaking and the walls were bone dry. The puddles just appeared. By the third night of rain, the puddles had formed a trail, leading from his bedroom door down the hall, toward the attic steps. He'd never even opened the attic. That night, the thunder was constant, rolling in waves that rattled the windows. Carter told me he woke up around 2 a.m. to a sharp crack, like something heavy had hit the roof. He got up, grabbed a flashlight, and went to check for damage. When he reached the top of the stairs, the air felt strange, colder, heavier. And that was when he noticed it, faint footsteps above him, slow, wet. He froze. The steps moved from one end of the attic to the other, then stopped right above where he stood. He said he called out, "Hello?" thinking maybe an animal had gotten in. The answer came as another thunderclap once, and then, right after it, a second sound, a soft, dragging noise, like something heavy being pulled across the floorboards. The footsteps started again. He tried to convince himself it was raccoons or water damage warping the wood. But when he pointed the flashlight up the attic stairs, the beam reflected off something on the second step. Small, pale and wet, a footprint, bare, human. He didn't go up. He backed down the hallway, shut his bedroom door, and sat on the bed with the flashlight aimed at the crack beneath it. He swore that after a few minutes, he saw shadows moving past the gap, slow, deliberate, stopping just short of his door. And then, through the roar of rain outside, he heard a voice whisper from the other side, "It's still raining up here." The next morning, Carter called me, I'm a friend of his from work, and asked if I could come help check the attic. I figured he was overreacting, maybe spooked by being alone in a storm. When I got there, he looked awful. Pale, eyes bloodshot, hands shaking like he hadn't slept in days. We went up together. The house was freezing, even though the storm had passed hours earlier. When we reached the attic door, the smell hit me first. Stagnant water and rot. The floor was soaked, puddles everywhere, and in the center of it all sat a single rusted bathtub. The kind with clawed feet. It wasn't there when Carter moved in. Inside the tub there was an inch of black rainwater. The surface rippled slightly even though there was no draft, and right in the middle of it floated a woman's shoe. We left immediately. Carter stayed with me for a few nights. He kept saying he could still hear the dripping sound in his dreams, like rain falling on hollow wood. 2 days later, he went back to the house alone to collect his tools. The weather had cleared. No storm for once. That was the last time anyone saw him. The sheriff's office found his truck in the driveway, the front door open. Inside, the power was out again, even though the rest of the street had service. The only light came from a single flashlight lying on the attic steps, still on, beam pointed upward. They followed the trail of water up the stairs, through the attic door, and there was the bathtub, still full of black water, but this time, there were 2 shoes floating in it. Story 2. The Crossing. There's a bridge about 5 miles outside of town that everyone around here calls the Crossing. It's not much to look at. Just an old concrete span over the Willow Creek surrounded by thick forest and farmland. But people avoid it when it rains. They say the water there doesn't sound right during a storm. It doesn't roar or rush like a normal flood. It whispers. I never believed any of that, until last spring. I was driving back from my sister's late one night when the sky opened up. A flash flood warning buzzed on my phone, but I figured I could make it home if I went slow. The roads were empty, just endless walls of rain in my headlights and the distant grumble of thunder. When I reached the crossing, the water was already lapping against the guardrails. The smart move would have been to turn around, but I could see the other side maybe 50 feet away, and figured I'd make it if I went straight through. Halfway across, the truck's engine sputtered and died. Everything went black except for the lightning. For a second, the whole bridge flashed white. And in that strobing light, I saw someone standing in the middle of the road ahead. They were facing me, arms hanging limp at their sides. Just standing there in the rain. When the darkness returned, they were gone. I turned the key again and again, but the truck wouldn't start. The radio hissed static, headlights flickering weakly, and then through the white noise I heard a voice whisper, faint, almost buried under the rain, "Throw it back." I froze. The sound came from the passenger seat. The seat was empty. I got out of the truck, splashing into knee-deep water, trying not to panic. The rain was so heavy it felt like static against my skin. I was just about to grab my phone when something thumped against the bridge railing behind me. It was a glass jar, old, cloudy, like something you'd find in a shed. It had rolled up from the river, somehow against the current, and clinked against the concrete. Inside, I could just make out what looked like a soaked photograph, maybe a family portrait. I picked it up without thinking, wiped the mud off, and tried to pull the lid open. But it wouldn't budge. Another flash of lightning, another voice. "Throw it back." This time it came from under the bridge. I didn't look. I just hurled the jar into the river and ran for the truck. But as soon as it hit the water, something else washed up. Another jar. Rolling against my boots, I kicked it away. But more followed. Dozens of them bobbing against the bridge supports, glass clinking like wind chimes in the flood. Some were empty, some filled with paper, and one, I'll never forget this, had what looked like a human tooth floating inside. I scrambled back into the truck and slammed the door. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear myself breathe. The voice came again, louder, closer. "You took something. You must return something." Lightning struck nearby, bright enough to light up the cab. The passenger seat was not empty anymore. There was a shape sitting there, unsoaked to the bone, head bowed, hands clasped around another jar. I couldn't see its face, but the water dripping off it sounded wrong, like it was falling in slow motion. Then it turned its head toward me, and the thing's mouth opened, went wide, too wide, and a flood of water poured out, gurgling and slapping against the dashboard. I screamed and slammed my foot on the gas. Somehow the engine caught and I tore off the bridge, tires screeching through the floodwater. I didn't stop until I reached town. The next morning, I went back with the sheriff. The storm had cleared, the bridge was intact, but my tire tracks ended halfway across. Beyond that point, there was nothing. No jars, no debris, no footprints. Just one thing. At the exact center of the bridge, sitting neatly on the yellow divider line, was a single glass jar. clean and dry despite the storm. Inside was a photograph. It was of me, standing on the bridge in the rain, holding a jar. Story 3. The relay station. I've been working maintenance for the county's communications department for about 6 years now. It's not glamorous, but it pays well and mostly keeps me alone, which I prefer. One of our key responsibilities is checking remote relay towers during bad weather, making sure lightning hasn't fried any equipment or knocked a station offline. Most of those towers are tucked away in the middle of nowhere. There's one in particular, Station 9, that we only visit when absolutely necessary. It's located deep in a forest reserve that's technically closed to the public after sunset. The place gives everyone the creeps. I've always joked that the woods feel off there, like sound doesn't travel normally. Even the radio cuts in and out near the station, as if the air itself doesn't want to carry noise. It was around late July when we had one of those violent summer storms roll through. The kind that shakes your house and turns every tree into a lightning rod. I got the call around 8:30 p.m. Station 9 had gone dark. The higher-ups wanted a status check immediately. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I figured it'd be a quick drive, check a fuse, and go home. The rain started coming down in heavy sheets by the time I reached the access road. It's about a 2-mile dirt trail that winds through dense pine forest. Every flash of lightning illuminated the trees like twisted black bones. When I finally reached the clearing, I noticed something strange. Normally, the red signal light atop the tower blinks every few seconds. That night it wasn't just off and it was gone. No faint glow, no hum from the generator. Just blackness and the unending sound of rain on metal. I parked the truck, grabbed my flashlight, and jogged toward the station's small maintenance shed. Inside, I found the control panel dead. No power at all. That's not unheard of after a strike, but what unsettled me was the smell. Like burnt insulation mixed with something sour, something organic. Then I noticed muddy footprints. At first, I thought they were mine, but no. They were smaller, barefoot, and they trailed in from the door, leading deeper into the shed toward the generator room. I called out instinctively. "Hello? Anyone in here?" No answer. Only the storm. The prints stopped right in front of the generator casing. There was a handprint on the metal panel. Small, wet, and streaked down like whoever made it had slid their hand while leaning close. The panel itself was open, the wires tangled and cut as if torn out with force. That's when the lights flickered. Not back on. Just a single pulse from the tower outside, as if it had received a signal. One single red flash against the black sky. Then darkness again. The storm raged harder. The thunder rolled so close it rattled the walls. I decided to radio in, but my line was pure static. Even my backup didn't pick up anything but distorted bursts of noise. Whispers almost. When I stepped outside to get a signal, I froze. The tower was humming. It shouldn't have been. It didn't have power. But there it was, vibrating with this deep electrical moan that you could feel in your ribs. And at the very top, that red light flashed again, rhythmic this time. 2 seconds on, 2 seconds off. Like a code. I could have sworn it was pulsing in patterns. I aimed my flashlight up the ladder that ran along the side of the tower. Every bolt and rung gleamed with rain, but then something shifted up there. A silhouette clinging to the metal about halfway up. My first thought was that someone was trapped. But as the lightning flashed again, I realized the figure wasn't moving. It was pressed flat against the rungs, head cocked sideways like it was listening. And then, it turned toward me. Even from below, I could tell it was looking straight down. The red light blinked again, and for 1 second I saw its face illuminated in the reflection. Pale, featureless except for the eyes. Empty, hollow pits that glowed faintly from within. I stumbled back so fast I nearly slipped. The next lightning strike blinded me. When my vision cleared, the figure was gone. I don't know what made me look down at that point. Maybe instinct. But when I did, I saw more footprints, dozens of them forming in the mud around the base of the tower. Small, barefoot like children's feet. They were fresh, appearing in real time, one after another, like something invisible was walking out of the shadows toward me. That broke me. I ran. The forest felt endless on the way back. Every sound behind me made me sprint faster. Branches breaking, wet steps slapping against the mud. When I finally burst out onto the access road, my headlights were still on, but my truck door was open. I knew I had locked it. Inside, the radio crackled. A voice, faint and wrong, was whispering through the static. It wasn't any channel I recognized, I remember it clearly. Between the distortion, it repeated the same sentence again and again. Signal received. Return to tower. I slammed the door, floored the gas, and didn't look back once. When I reported it, my supervisor said I must have been hallucinating from lightning stress or exhaustion. They sent another guy the next morning during clear daylight, and he found nothing unusual. No footprints, no broken generator. Everything was online. He even said there wasn't any sign of a storm having passed through. But here's the part that keeps me up. A week later, I checked the system logs. Station 9 had been transmitting a steady, repeating signal for the entire night after I left. When decoded, the pattern read, "He is still listening." Story 4, The Voices in the Storm. It started raining the night my father died. That was 3 weeks ago, and the rain hasn't stopped since. Not once. I know how that sounds, impossible, right? But if you lived where I do, in a forgotten pocket of the Appalachians where people vanish into fog and nobody from the city ever comes looking, you'd believe it. The sky just decided to open that night and never close again. The roads have washed out. Power flickers on and off. The cell towers are down. I'm the only one left in this house, or in my father's house. And the storm has swallowed the world beyond the tree line. At first, I tried to keep some kind of routine. I cooked, read, even talked to myself just to fill the silence between the thunderclaps. But over time, the silence stopped being silent. The rain started talking back. It began subtle, soft voices buried under the rhythm of raindrops on the window pane. I thought it was my mind playing tricks. Grief does that, but by the fourth night I heard my father's voice clear as day through the static of the downpour. He was calling my name. "Evan," he said, muffled but distinct. "You need to let me in." That broke something in me, because I buried my father in a casket 6 feet deep less than a week earlier. I told myself it was the storm. Wind in the eaves, water in the gutters, but the voice came again, closer this time, directly beneath my bedroom window. "It's cold out here, son." Opened the door. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. And then came the slow, deliberate knock on the front door downstairs. It was so soft at first that I convinced myself I was imagining it, but then it came again, 3 measured knocks. Rainwater was dripping through the ceiling above the hallway, and in each flash of lightning, I could see the shadows shift on the walls. I stayed in bed until dawn. When daylight finally crept in, I went downstairs with my father's old hunting knife in hand. The front porch was soaked, but the floorboards were covered in mud, footprints bare and small, leading up to the door and then away again toward the woods. I stopped sleeping after that. Every night since I've heard them. Different voices now. Not my father's. Sometimes they sound like children, sometimes like my old neighbors who moved away years ago. Sometimes I hear them whispering directly through the walls right behind my headboard. "Evan, come outside. We need your help. It's not so cold anymore. The water's warm now. We're waiting for you." They always come during the lightning strikes, as if the thunder itself carries their words. One night, I tried to record it. I left my phone by the window and hit record. The next morning, I played it back expecting nothing but static. And for the first few seconds, that's all there was. But then, in the middle of the recording, came the unmistakable sound of my own voice saying, "I'm going outside now." I never said that. I never even left the bed. The power's been out for 2 days straight now. The only light comes from the flashes in the clouds and my battery lantern, which is dying too. 2 nights ago, something knocked again. Only this time the door opened. I heard it creak, slow like someone trying not to wake me. And then footsteps padding across the floor. Not heavy boots, but wet, bare feet slapping softly on wood. They came all the way to my bedroom door, stopped, and stood there for what felt like hours. I could hear breathing. Then, in the gentlest tone I've ever heard, a woman's voice said, "You left the window open." I remember because that window, the one above my bed, and slammed shut on its own at that exact moment. The glass shattered inward, scattering rain and dirt across the sheets. When I finally looked toward the door, it was standing wide open. There was nobody there. That was 3 days ago. I've barricaded every door and window since. The storm hasn't let up. The river's flooded over the road. The phone lines are dead. And the generator ran out of gas last night. I keep thinking about something my father told me once when I was a kid. An old mountain superstition. He said that when a person dies violently, the rain that falls afterward isn't real rain, it's voices. The sound of everything they wanted to say before death took them. If you listen too long, they find you. I never believed him until now, because right now as I write this, I can hear my own voice whispering back through the rain outside. Evan, it's your turn to open the door.